Hi, I'm Reese. Welcome to Fresh from the Cuisina. Today, I'll be showing you how to make the classic brunch staple, Eggs Benedict. There's just something about eggs in the morning that makes the day brighter. This brunch dish is gonna be your fancy upgrade from the usual bacon and egg combo. Okay, so I started the dish by making my muffin dough ahead of time to let it ferment overnight. To start, I'll first be combining the dry ingredients. In a bowl, I added 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour. Remember to measure accurately. I used my knife to knock off the excess flour. So to that bowl, I added 1/4 teaspoon of salt on one side. It's important that you only put your salt to one side at first. On the opposite side, I added my 1/4 teaspoon of not sponsored instant dry yeast that I'll pretend I didn't spill. I added the yeast on the other side. It's important to not place your salt directly on your yeast so as to not kill it. It'll be completely fine once you mix your dry ingredients together. After combining them, I set them aside at first so I can start with my wet ingredients. So the wet ingredients are simple. First, I just added 1/2 cup of water. After that, I added 2/3 cup of milk. And lastly, 2 tablespoons of butter that stuck to the container. So I had to scrape it off with a knife. So after combining your wet ingredients, you can heat them up in a saucepan. It should only be lukewarm, warm enough to melt the butter. After that, we can take it off the heat and get it ready to combine it with our dry ingredients. Our wet ingredients should be incorporated with our dry ingredients slowly. As you can see here, I'm doing them in intervals. You will know that your dough is ready to rest if it looks like it can hold its shape but it doesn't look too wet. For now, I will be covering the bowl with plastic wrap and a tea towel before I let it rest. I like to let it ferment for 18 hours or at least it's doubled in size before I work with it. So it's now the next day and the dough has been fermenting for at least 18 hours and it's now doubled in size. So I covered my workspace liberally with flour just so the dough doesn't stick when I work with it on the countertop. I also covered my spatula in flour because I will be using it to turn over the dough. Once I open the dough, it just really smells like a bakery. Once you turn out your dough, you don't want to work with it as much so as to not pop the bubbles that have formed while it was fermenting. After you've turned out your dough, you just want to cover it with a towel for now and let it sit for around 10 minutes to let the gluten relax. So 10 minutes have passed and the dough has been resting for a while now. After that, you can start flattening your dough until it's about half an inch thick. After the dough has been flattened, you can now start cutting palm-sized rounds from it. I only used a small cake tin for this, but you can use a cookie cutter or anything you have lying around the house. After cutting all my rounds, I just laid them on baking sheets and I'll be covering them in plastic wrap to let them rest for another 45 minutes before I start cooking. So to cook the muffins, I only grabbed a large non-stick pan and then I placed them without any oil directly onto the pan. These will cook for about 3 to 5 minutes on each side. Just remember to flip them. You can cover them if you want, but I just prefer to leave them like that. After that, I just proceeded to cook the bacon. Nothing too special. Just go ahead and put your bacon without any oil on the pan and get them as crispy as you can. So for the Hollandaise, I just got 3 egg yolks that I placed in the bowl that I thought I showed in the camera and placed them on a double boiler like this. I set the heat to low because if it's too hot, the eggs will split, and if it's too cold, the butter will solidify. Once it's at a gentle simmer, I place the bowl gently. After that, I proceeded to add a little lemon juice, and a little bit of salt to taste. Then you can start whisking. It's important to keep on stirring so the eggs will not sit on their own and split. To this, I added a little water just to thin it down. Once the mixture has thickened a little bit, I will start adding chunks of cold butter. It's important to incorporate your butter slowly to let it emulsify so the mixture will not split. So for the poached eggs, I first set my water to a gentle simmer. To that, I add a little bit of white vinegar to help my egg whites set. After that, I crack my egg in a separate bowl just to give me more control of how I place it in the water. Before I added my egg, I stirred the water to create a small vortex just to help the egg keep a round shape while it's poaching. The egg will be cooked for 2 to 4 minutes depending on how runny you want your yolks to be. I kept mine at 2 minutes, but you can keep yours for longer or shorter if you'd want. It's now time to assemble, starting with your toasted muffins, followed by your Canadian bacon, and then your poached egg. Be gentle, these are very fragile. And then lastly, your Hollandaise. You can put as much or as little as you'd want. This is optional, but I added a little Cajun seasoning for a little heat. And there you have it. I hope you'll enjoy making this classic brunch staple. Here's Eggs Benedict, fresh from the Cuisina.